Welcome back to Over 50 and Flourishing. Today's guest is somebody who helps women live lives they love. Susie Pettit is a certified relationship, life, and wellness coach. She's a mom of 5, the founder of the Love Your Life School, and the host of the top 1% global podcast, The Love Your Life Show. After spending years in the trap of people-pleasing and perfectionism, Susie now helps women set healthy boundaries, beat overwhelm, and build thriving relationships, especially during midlife when family dynamics start to shift. I am so excited to dive into this conversation about parenting, relationships, and flourishing in our season of life. Today's podcast is sponsored by Naked Wines. Naked Wines is a service that directly connects you to the world's finest independent winemakers. This way, you get award-winning wine that's delivered straight to your door. Now is the time to join the Naked Wines community. Just head over to nakedwines.com/over50, click enter voucher, and put in my code over50 for both the code and password for 6 bottles of wine for just $39.99 with shipping included. That is $100 off your first 6 bottles of nakedwines.com/over50. Use the code and password over50 for 6 bottles of wine for $39.99. Ancient Nutrition's multi-collagen advanced lean supplements contain 10 types of collagen from 10 real food-based sources. This formula is powered by clinically studied ingredients to promote fat loss and healthy weight management, as well as building lean muscle, which is something we ladies in midlife really need. As you know and have heard, collagen also reduces joint discomfort and improves the look and growth of our skin, hair, and nails. Talk about winning. Right now, Ancient Nutrition is offering 25% off your first order when you go to ancientnutrition.com/over50. That's ancientnutrition.com/over50 for 25% off your first order. ancientnutrition.com/over50. This podcast is sponsored by MD Hearing. I recently gave a friend of mine a pair of MD hearing aids, and he was like, wow, these are incredible, high quality, easy to use, rechargeable hearing aids with exceptional sound quality, and they are personalized to your hearing profile. Get the high quality, affordable hearing aids you deserve with MD Hearing. Go to shopmdhearing.com, use promo code over50 to get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. Plus, they are adding a free extra charging case, a $100 value for listeners of Over 50 and Flourishing. That's shopmdhearing.com. Use our promo code over50 and get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. Thinning hair in midlife can be so frustrating, and I've decided to go after it in multiple ways. One of those is Vegamore's Grow Hair Serum. Vegamore is the leader in plant-powered, science-backed solutions for thinning hair. Are you tired of dealing with that shedding and thinning? Take back control of your hair with Vegamore. For a limited time, go to vegamore.com/over50, code over50 to get 20% off your first order. That's vegamor.com/over50. Code over50 to save 20% on your first order. vegamor.com/over50. Code over50. Hey, Susie, welcome to Over 50 and Flourishing. It is so good to have you today.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. Very excited.
Thank you. Well, you're a busy gal helping to shape the lives of women so that they can live their best life. You and I have a lot in common in that respect. You've been at it for more than 20 years. So kind of ramp us up and talk to us a little bit about how you got where you are today and kind of what your overarching message is.
Yeah. I mean, hearing you say I've been at it for more than 20 years, I have professionally in my current job as a life coach. And yet when I think back, I'm 53 now, so I've probably been at it for, let's say 47 years, because I can remember in 6th and 7th grade telling my friends, hey, if you have any problems, like write them on a piece of paper and stick them in my middle school locker and I'll help you. Like I was always really wanting other people to feel better, and that commitment to, I have a skill of making things simple, like seeing sort of the big view and then coming in with, sort of this really concrete action that can be taken to help things. And that started back from my earliest memories. And then I went in, I was actually an educator in the classroom teaching French of all things. And exactly, magnifique. And you were just in Paris. That's so fun. And yet realizing that it wasn't the French that I loved. It was more like I was using my French to teach skills in it. Like I was teaching confidence and, my French 4, and we were getting into personal, like psychology. And I was signing up for any sort of coaching in the school dynamic, like of the outing club or the environmental club or of the lacrosse team, to help really, at that time, it was young girls feel better about themselves with confidence and the skills I really didn't have growing up. And then I moved from there into leaving the classroom. I had my sons and running on my own time, groups I called a middle school magic, and helping girls feel more confident and feel more, really a lot of body issue talk, a lot of, confidence. We can do this, setting goals, going after what they were wanting. And then realizing at some point in there that I was like, wow, you know what? It would be a lot easier if they were also getting this reinforced at home. So I started then to target the mothers and say, hey, you know what? Like the things let me teach you some things that'll make not only your daughter, and because at the time I was only working with, girls, your daughter feel more confident, but you also have less drama in the house, feel more confident as a parent, and learn really the simple tools to raise more confident, less anxious kids. So I started to get moms that were like, okay, that sounds good. And that really that's when my professional life started, moving from sort of the girl groups into more the parenting, because when we're getting that message trickling down, it just made change so much faster. I could be talking to the girls every Wednesday, in our middle school magic group, but then if they were going home and having some of the anxiety of the parents leaching onto the kids, which is totally natural and normal, that would make things take so much longer. And so that's really where I love helping people now, helping people, parents, but also, if listeners are not parents, all of us learning the things to help the people in our lives that we care about, feel better, while also not feeling so responsible for everyone else's lives and experiences. Cause it's a fine line between sort of modeling what's awesome and helpful and that feeling the heaviness of responsibility of, oh my goodness, my son is stressed. What should I do? Taking it on as theirs. And, that's what I'm seeing now, sort of forward thinking as my biggest, how I can help most collectively, because I'm seeing a shift in this, parenting of like, oh my gosh, I have to help everyone. I have to, my kid is anxious. This is anxious, versus us noticing that that's actually not helping lower the anxiety rates in our kids. It's actually our kids being, anywhere from 0 to 35, their anxiety is skyrocketing. And what is happening there with this, that we are doing to, maybe add to that we can shift out of. And that's very real. That idea that like, oh, if we do it all for them, that'll be helpful. And us stepping back and be like, actually, what we're thinking is helpful might actually be hindering, if not harmful. And might this be easier for all of us if we let all the other humans in our lives live their lives? We live ours.
I love that we're talking about this. And to your point, not everybody is a parent, but we do have a lot of parents of grown children, many of whom are now grandparents, and they are loving this stage, and they are also learning how to navigate the nuances of that, right? How to subtly parent, but not overstep, how to encourage their adult children to parent, all those things. You touched on anxiety and knowing when to step in and to step out. And I would say this generation of children is the most anxious. I attribute a lot of it to social media. Honestly, the way they grow up today, what they are exposed to, the bombardment of all of these things. But not only that, just enormous pressure to perform in school, perform, be a nice human all the time. You can't, there's no room for messing up because the consequences are far too great. Or, just overburdening them with all of these extracurriculars because we think they need it to round them out. I mean, don't we as parents just lay such a heavy blanket over our kids to the point where I feel like they're suffocating sometimes?
Yeah. And I think, to be fair, it's effective. The social media, we often look at it like, oh my gosh, social media is harming the kids, and they get this idea that they have to be all these things. It's also harming the parents because we have all these ideas that we have to be the good mom and we have to do the right thing. And we get on, we're just sort of like in our day, and then we get on some sort of social media and we see our friends have signed their kid up for the latest violin class. And we're like, oh my goodness. And so there really has been there's been a shift since many of us, we're on this podcast over 50. We were raised in an area where they sort of call it like the Home Depot parents, where our parents were just like, if you get your food and you're well taken care of, it's all set. Like you go into Home Depot, it's like, where is the help? We don't know. They're in the house somewhere, but it's like, if you're going to get the peanut butter from the top shelf, you better figure it out. It's not like, I can't do that. And we sort of move into this next generation of this idea that women can actually do it all. We can be in the house and we can be at work. But if we're in the house, we better be like really good in the house. And so we're looking at social media. We're looking at other people online to see what that means to be a good, and we're feeling pressure ourselves. And so we really went from that like almost hands-off parenting, which there's good and bad of all kinds of parenting, into this more helicopter, like we need to do it all. What is our kid doing? It's our responsibility. Almost as the kid is an extension of us. If our kid is not getting into the right school, what did we do wrong? That was never the mindset of parents back in the 60s and 70s. Now it is 100%.
Public school is what you did.
Yes. You're like, oh, well, let's see. And the mom, you'd be there to be the supporter. Like, oh, that's too bad that you didn't get into that. But you wouldn't feel that backlash, which is what I help people with now, of that like guilt or shame of I did something wrong. There's a part of letting everyone live their own life. So that is, whether you're a parent or not, I guess where I see it showing up for people who are not parents is in their relationships or with their parents, because everyone has a parent. But if their mom is lonely, feeling the responsibility to manage their mother's loneliness, whereas that is not their mother is having a life experience for the situation she's in. And are we in fear or are we in faith? And when we're in fear, we're going to come out and overmanage, overfunction, often leading to the other person to underfunction. Or maybe someone without kids sees that in their friend dynamic. Their friend is always going after the wrong guys or doing things that they think they shouldn't be doing. And then you get over involved in their life. So that is, it's I don't know, epidemic is the word, but it is right now. There's a lot more anxiety, a lot more pressure with social media on everyone. Yeah. It's social media, but it's also being able to look online and being like, what's the best way to parent our teen or to lose midlife weight gain or like, and there are 400 responses, which creates confusion in our brain, which then has us often spin in this like doing nothing, procrastinating living is what it's like, do I do this? Do I do this? Then we're just too overwhelmed. And then we feel bad about ourselves, bad about the situation, and things can spiral. So that's where I like to bring more ease to people's lives.
Right. I mean, point. I mean, there's good and bad, right? We have access to information, but oh my gosh, is there information out there now? So now comes the discernment, and you're right. I mean, you can try this and try that and try this and try that. And before you know it, you're trying all these things, but you're not trying what is possibly being placed in your heart to really, really do for you. So it's this discernment of all the information that's out there. Before we dive a little bit further, Susie, there's so much that I want to get into because you're right. We're talking about relationships in general, whether we are parents, children of parents, marital, dynamics, all of that. I want to talk about, and I know you and I have had challenges with this in the past, people pleasing, being a codependent perfectionist, and the need for control over a situation. So we'll take a quick break and we'll dive into all of those things when we come back. Today's podcast is sponsored by Naked Wines. Have you ever been in the grocery store or the liquor store and you're just kind of staring around all that wine and your eyes are bugging out, wondering, what do I get? Where do I start? There's so much and I don't want to make a bad choice. Can I help you out here? Naked Wines is a service that directly connects you to the world's finest independent winemakers. This way, you get award-winning wine that's delivered straight to your door. I loved it. I tried it. I'm sold. Naked Wines, when that box came, I was so excited to try. I'm a Pinot Noir, Pinot Grigio kind of gal. It was absolutely delicious. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to worry about it. The taste was exceptional. Now is the time to join the Naked Wines community. Just head over to nakedwines.com/over50, click enter voucher, and put in my code over50 for both the code and password for 6 bottles of wine for just $39.99 with shipping included. That is $100 off your first 6 bottles of nakedwines.com/over50. Use the code and password over50 for 6 bottles of wine for $39.99. Boy, the human body is an amazing thing, isn't it? It can repair and grow in ways that are still pushing the limits of what science can explain. But let's face it, as we age, our body's natural healing and building processes, they slow down. Doesn't mean there's nothing we can do about it. Let me introduce you to a collagen supplement from Ancient Nutrition that can help you look and feel your absolute best. Ancient Nutrition's multi-collagen advanced lean supplements contain 10 types of collagen from 10 real food-based sources. This formula is powered by clinically studied ingredients to promote fat loss and healthy weight management, as well as building lean muscle, which is something we ladies in midlife really, really need. As you know and have heard, collagen also reduces joint discomfort and improves the look and growth of our skin, hair, and nails. Talk about winning. Right now, Ancient Nutrition is offering 25% off your first order when you go to ancientnutrition.com/over50. That's ancientnutrition.com/over50 for 25% off your first order. ancientnutrition.com/over50. This podcast is sponsored by MD Hearing. I recently gave a friend of mine a pair of MD hearing aids, and he was like, wow, these are incredible, high quality, easy to use, rechargeable hearing aids with exceptional sound quality, and they are personalized to your hearing profile. And the cost? When I told him what I spent, he said, no way, over 90% less than clinic hearing aids. That's right, 90% less. The Neo will fit inside your ear. No one ever knows it's there. Plus, MD Hearing just launched the Neo XS. That is the smallest hearing aid ever by MD Hearing. Just amazing. It is as good as premium quality hearing aids, but $297 for a pair of hearing aids. That is just crazy good. Get the high quality, affordable hearing aids you deserve with MD Hearing. Go to shopmdhearing.com, use promo code over50 to get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. Plus, they are adding a free extra charging case, a $100 value for listeners of Over 50 and Flourishing. That's shopmdhearing.com. Use our promo code over50 and get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. Welcome back. My guest today is Susie Pettit. She is the host of the Love Your Life podcast, and she is an advocate for women's mental health, especially at this stage in our lives, because we're talking about relationships, Susie, with children, grown children in particular, relationships with our parents. You know, we are in this sandwich generation where we are, shall we say, smothered in salami? I mean, there are a lot of relationships going on here, right? So let's deep dive. Let's talk about the things that I touched upon before the commercial break, and that is codependency, that is perfectionism, being a control freak, all these things that we love to bring to the equation in the name of helping, but really we're hindering, most importantly, ourselves.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I'm like, absolutely, let's do it. And yeah. I love helping this age of women. I mean, not only because I'm in the age, but also because I think we get to a certain stage where we're just sick of feeling so heavy and burdened with the responsibility. It's like we've done the people pleasing and the, doing what everyone else wants and being the good little girl and all of that. And we just get to a point where we're like, oh my goodness, this is no fun. So we either get there cognitively or unfortunately we get there physically, where we'll start getting more and more diagnoses of, showing us that our system is under stress. It's like the IBS is the autoimmune, that all this.
Come up,
yeah.
Right.
And it's like, oh, wait a minute. When our brain is not tapping in our bodies, sometimes like maybe you don't have to micromanage everyone else's life and do it perfectly all while we're wearing the perfect lip gloss. And so that's sort of happening on the side. And then we have our hormones going down where they can help us in that, where that we get to that sort of like, okay, I'm done. But I like helping women and men, frankly, because they can be in that same like midlife craziness, but helping them not go from like helping everyone all the time to that like, okay, I'm done. Goodbye. I'm going to live on a mountain and I don't want to see any of you ever again, and stay in that gray area, because that's what most of us want. We want to be able to have connection in the relationships that matter with us. We want to not feel stressed with what is going on in other people's lives. We want to be able to love them and, pour love on them, but not be up at 3 a.m. worrying about them is what I would say. Yeah. And there is another way. Like we can do that. So that is how I like helping people.
Well, it's important. And I've talked a lot about the important, my son's 20, you have children who are 21 and older, right? Mm-hmm. So I talk a lot about the importance of letting them launch, and we have to tee them up. And I've always said to Styles, I'm not raising a child, I'm raising an adult. I have to tee you up to be able to thrive independently. And thriving doesn't mean rainbows and unicorns all the time. It means you're going to hit some life lessons. You're going to hit them hard and you're going to suffer the consequences. But it's as we've said, it's in the difficulty where we really, really grow some roots. And that allows the leaves in the tree to bud and bloom. So let's talk about why we're so afraid to let our kids just suffer consequences and learn the hard way.
I think because it feels so hard for us, and we have not learned how to feel the hard. Like to just sit and be like, yeah, of course I'm feeling stressed right now that my son didn't get that job that he wanted, and turn towards us to nurture ourselves instead of trying to change them so we don't have to feel the uncomfortable emotion. Because that's what we're trying to do when we're micromanaging other people, is that we're like, oh my gosh, they're stressed. Okay, what do I need them to change so I don't feel stressed about their stress? Whereas if we are in the mindset that, you're talking about, and then I like to encourage and preach also, is that, happiness isn't like, it's not that we want our kids to be happy all the time, because I have all boys and they would all be pretty happy sitting downstairs playing video games and eating Cheetos. Like they're happy. Like, is that the life I want from them? Like that's only going to last a certain period of time. Right. So that's where we get sort of happiness wrong. That happiness, and I won't go into that here, but like we do want to be moving towards purpose and meaning, which means that we're going to have discomforts. We're going to have, road hurdles along the way. And as a parent, the most important skill I always say we need as parents is the ability to self-regulate. And that means to feel our own feelings, to not run from the, whatever is happening. Yeah. It's like I say, like the better we get at feeling uncomfortable, the better our life gets. It's not what people want to hear, but it is something that, right. But it is when I can just recognize that the feeling I'm feeling is a normal feeling to have for what I'm experiencing. Say my son, my 21-year-old is applying for jobs right now. So let's say that he calls me later and he's like, I didn't get this one job that I wanted. What is a normal human reaction for me as a mother who loves him to feel? Sadness, disappointment, sorrow. Okay. Versus what we do. And I just sit in that. And I'm like, what does it mean for Susie to, this is where we weren't taught emotional intelligence, but what does it mean for Susie to feel disappointment? What does it mean for her to feel sorrow? I feel that. And then I can be more proactive with my son and give him what he needs. What does he need? A mom being like, well, I told you, you should have done, or a like, oh, it's okay. Let's, I diminish and I dismiss what he's feeling, or I go in and sort of show him what he did wrong. No, he needs a mom to be like, oh, that stinks. Tell me more.
Right.
Then he gets to feel his uncomfortable emotion of his own disappointment. I'm not taking his emotion away. I'm letting him have his emotion. And then he gets to say like, yeah, I am a little disappointed. I wonder what, and he goes into a learning brain without me involved. Like, I wonder what I might have done differently, or I wonder if I had followed up 3 times on email, that would have, and then he learns, and that's how we go through life. But often as parents, we're so uncomfortable, like, no, let me fix what's happening.
Well, okay. And here is what is so stinking ironic about what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing we loathe in our marriages is when we communicate our feelings to our spouse. And what do? They don't spend the time listening. They try to fix the problem, because that's traditionally a male trait, to try to fix things and make it better, because that's the way that they show their love. But here we are as moms essentially doing the same thing to our grown children or even younger children. Instead of being a landing pad or a safe space where they can let it out, we empathize, we listen, without offering the framework to do it better. We're sitting here doing exactly what we loathe when someone else does it to us, and then it's trying to fix it.
Yes.
So how do you stop yourself in the tracks? And what's a really good strategy in that situation?
Well, the first thing is to recognize it's awareness. And that is so annoying, but to recognize that you're doing it. And whether we're men or women, it is a reactive trauma response. Most people know the fight or flee response. Maybe they know fight, flee, freeze. There's also a fourth, which experts call fawn. I like to call fix. So it says fight, flight, freeze, or fix. So our spouse is doing the same thing. Wife comes in upset about something. They're like, this is uncomfortable. I love my spouse. Okay, what do I do? Let me give advice. That's their fix it. So to them sort of being aware of that. And actually, I'm mentioning that not to fault our spouse, but it helps us when we're like, oh, this is what is happening. We have a little more compassion when they're like, well, you should go do this. And we're just like, okay, they're doing that fix it thing. What do I need to do? Just say like, hey, honey, I just need you to say like, that stinks. I'm sorry you're having that feeling.
Or just hold me.
Well, and why I'm mentioning that is because it's easier to spot in other people than ourselves. So, people might be listening and they're like, well, I know my friend does that with her son. And I'm like, right. Okay. And if you spot it, you got it. Like, So the first thing is to sort of look at where, someone is coming to you, whether it's a friend, a kid, a parent, or with an emotional experience. They're just that's how we connect as humans. They're sharing something that's going on in their lives. And what is our sort of knee-jerk reaction? Is it to be like, oh, I have this good podcast you should listen to, or, oh, how about this book? Or, oh, like the fixing it, the automatic advice giving, the just following up and feeling, for the person feeling responsible to help this person get out of this uncomfortable emotion state. That's really the first thing, is to notice. And then when we notice it, we gain control over it, and then we can come up with some strategies. And really, for me and, my brave mamas, I like to say, like, first thing, take a breath. Like, take a breath, because what you will start to notice in your body, say my son calls me and says he didn't get this job. My body is going to be like it's going to react, as if I'm chased by a tiger. One way to calm my body down is to take a breath. So when I'm taking a breath, inhale and exhale, I am not able to say something, unskilled or reactive to my son or try to fix it. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I like practicing in front of a mirror, saying things like, tell me more, or, oh, wow, that sounds hard. What's that like for you? Or, I've never been through that, but that sounds a little uncomfortable. What's going on? We're just trying to get them to talk more about that emotion that they're having. Because what I know, sort of as a cognitive trained coach, is that what we're actually helping them do then is process their feeling. Just beautiful. Because they're coming and we're sort of together, we're co-regulating. We're like, hey, tell me, what is that like for you? They're like, it was really hard. I'm really disappointed. And you'll notice if you start doing this with your kid, that they will start to, it's like they start up here in this big spiral, and it'll fizzle out. Or maybe they're like, I'm so disappointed and it was so hard and I'm so upset and I never get jobs and it's word, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry you feel that way. And they're like, yeah, it's so, and then you're like, that stinks. And then they're like, yeah, well, I have 3 other applications out there. Maybe they'll get to it.
Right.
Which we're usually, unfortunately, jumping in way before they get to, like, an emotion is an energy in our body. So it's an energy in motion. So they have to let that energy fizzle out before they can get into their upper level thinking skills. And what we're doing is their emotion is in their body. It's all in motion. It's all, and we're like, well, you have 3 other applications out there. And they're like, no. And they hand us back more thinking that creates the same feeling. They're like, that's not going to work because it's the same. And we're not sort of letting the process go. So to answer your question more succinctly, awareness, notice it, start to notice it in other people, that fixing tendency. Start to think of when it's being done to you, what you'd actually like. Because if it's happening to us with our spouses, sometimes we just are like, oh, I know I don't want this. But then I like thinking, like, what do I actually want him to say? And I know both you and I are in marriages that are supportive now. I will say to him, I'll say, you know what? It would really help me if you said this. And it sounds ridiculous, like, to people, but try it. And then you just stay open-minded. So I'll say something like, it would really help me if you say, like, I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. Like, I really try to think of, like, what it would feel like. And then he says that. And then I need to stop my brain from saying, but he's just saying that because you told him to say that. It's like, yes, Susie, he's learning skill. Like, we're all learning here.
Sometimes how to work with us. All of our needs are different. And what's so wrong with that? What's so wrong with being a good teacher? Right? To affect a better result in the long run.
Yes.
Here's kind of what I do, and tell me what you think about this. I love to ask leading questions. Maybe it's the journalist in me. So I'll ask, and I'll ask more if I'm talking to my son or whatever. I'll ask about this and what about that? Or how do you think, or what do you feel about that? And then before I offer any input, I'll say, I have some thoughts on this, and if you're open to it, I'd be happy to share, but only if you want, if you want me to. What do you think about that? About letting the other person give you the permission, basically, to share your opinion on something?
Yes, it's like ask for consent before you give it. That is a wonderful thing and very helpful. And to say, like, I have some ideas, but is it okay if I share them? I also like to add in there, I have some ideas, but it's your life and you know best when I'm talking to my kid. Because what we're trying to do as parents is, and it doesn't matter their age, is we're trying to, what is coming out of a mom or dad's mouth often becomes the inner tape and the inner talkings in that kid's head. And so if I'm saying something that is, a confidence inducing thought, or that I'm like, it's your life, you know what's best. I want my kids to be thinking that when they're getting advice from other people. It's my life. I know what's best. When they're like middle life like us and they're like, what's the best way to do it? It's like, wait a minute. It's my life. I know best. I don't have to listen to the loudest commercial. So I definitely like asking for advice, asking for consent before I give advice. And yet for most people, I would say, if you are a parent, like, just stop giving advice. If they are over the age of 10, just stop. Because even it's very challenging with parenting and saying something on a podcast like, yes, ask leading questions. Because even with these leading questions that seem pretty innocuous, it depends on what our feeling state is when we're asking them. So if we're coming from a place of fear and codependency, like, oh my gosh, this is trouble. What is this? Our questions, they can sniff right out what we're really trying to add. It's like, well, do you think maybe you have other opportunities? Or whatever. Whereas if we're coming from a place of faith and we're just like, oh, this kid has got it. This is like, and we're more literally like interested and curious, and or like, I wonder what he's going to do. I wonder what he'll do next. It's the energy behind what we're asking. And so that's what's interesting. One of the tools I have my clients use is I say, parent as if you're like talking to the neighbor's kid. So the neighbor's kid, it says they lost their job and you aren't like, oh my God, and you aren't going catastrophic on their future. You're just like,
right.
oh, wow, that really must be hard.
Ooh, that's a really good,
yeah,
good mindset.
you're just sort of like distancing yourself a bit. And that can leave you in this very like faith loving energy versus the fear. Which I just want to mention one tool. I call it popcorn parenting, that is helpful across the board. We can use it popcorn spousing, popcorn neighbor, and popcorn friending, but it is based on this. It gives people sort of a handhold on how to be empathetic, not codependent. Because empathetic is just, we feel bad for the experiences that people are having and we feel reasonable emotions. Codependent is we feel responsible for those emotions. So popcorn parenting gives us a tool to use where it's based on, well, let's just say you and I, like we're, in the same area. I'm in Texas and I see you, you're going into a movie theater. I'm coming out and I'm like, oh my gosh, Dominique, have you seen the newest blockbuster? Like it is so cool. Like it was full of ups and downs, but I'm so glad they ended up well in the end and that guy didn't die. And you're like, Susie, I haven't seen it yet. And I'm like, oh, sorry. I totally thought that you were coming out too. And you're just, so then, you're like, okay, Susie, like, but you go into the movie theater and you're watching the movie all the while knowing that it ends well. Okay. That's the faith energy. Like and that is where I help parents really reprogram them. Like my kids' life ends well. Things work out for my kids. This is the exact experience my son needs to become the man he's going to become. This is the exact experience my daughter needs. That sort of mindset where you're watching and you see that they're not getting the job. The girlfriend dumped them, that all these ups and downs, but we're empathetic, like a good movie. Like we want those ups and downs. We want to feel the feelings. But we know we aren't like jumping in and calling the director and being like, you need to make sure he goes down. It's popcorn parenting is just this. It's the mindset of things work out for my family. I am not God. I am not this kid's, I don't know all the answers. We think we know, like if you do this, and that's where we get into this advice, but we don't know. And so we don't, we're not the director of their movie. Let's just sit back, grab our popcorn, try to calm our nervous system. And that can be really helpful to think about when we are trying not to be codependent and over involved in our kids' lives.
Yes. And that mindset, by the way, applies to every relationship and anything in life is you got to have faith. We're going to take a quick break. I really, really want to ask you, because I know so many parents, and there may be parents watching right now, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, or they're listening, oh my gosh, she's been talking about me. Oh, that's what I've been doing. And, they have maybe a strained relationship with their child, or they just don't feel like their child comes to them and shares. I hear that all the time. I wish I knew. I don't know. He or they just won't share with me. Can you redirect? Can you make up for lost time? And what can you do to make it happen and make some inroads to get a healthy relationship going? We're going to talk about that on the backside of this break. Susie Pettit is my guest today. Love Your Life is her podcast, and she is specialized in coaching not only kids, but us women in midlife. And we'll be back right after this. Thinning hair in midlife can be so frustrating, and I've decided to go after it in multiple ways. One of those is Vegamore's Grow Hair Serum. Vegamore is the leader in plant-powered, science-backed solutions for thinning hair. Did you know that their Grow Hair Serum was recently named the #1 prestige hair serum and is clinically proven to reduce shedding, leaving you with visibly fuller, healthier hair? It is vegan, cruelty-free, and formulated without harsh chemicals. So easy to use. In fact, I will just shampoo, condition my hair, towel dry it, and then apply Vegamore serum directly to my scalp, rub it in, and I style as normal. Takes a couple of months to see the difference, but I definitely am. Less shedding, less thinning, don't wait. Vegamore really, really works. Are you tired of dealing with that shedding and thinning? Take back control of your hair with Vegamore. For a limited time, go to vegamore.com/over50, code over50 to get 20% off your first order. That's vegamor.com/over50. Code over50 to save 20% on your first order. vegamor.com/over50, code over50. I just love hearing Tamara Levitt say, "Welcome to the Daily Calm." I'll tell you what, I hear those words and I'm already feeling more relaxed and at peace. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, and it gives you the power to calm your mind and literally change your life. They have guided meditations, like I just mentioned, sleep stories, sleep meditations, even calming music to help you drift off to a peaceful night's sleep. Grounding exercises that'll help you reset and relax when you feel just wound up and overwhelmed. And there are expert-led talks to help you handle grief, improve self-esteem, relationships, and so much more. Calm has more than 2 million 5-star reviews. What an amazing app. It is one of my favorites. Calm has an exclusive offer just for listeners of our show. Get 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/over50. This is an amazing value. Go to calm.com/over50 for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. Calm.com/over50 and tell Calm you heard about them from me. Welcome back to Over 50 and Flourishing. My spirited guest today is Susie Pettit. Susie, oh my gosh, just as I'm talking to you, I'm already thinking, I want to talk to her about this and this and this. So I'm throwing the life ring out. Please come back for another episode.
I love it.
I just love your energy, and you are chock full of wisdom, and I can see us diving off into all of these different tangents. But in the meantime, we're really kind of focusing on relationships. We've been talking a lot about parent-child relationships, especially with older children. That's kind of where we are in this space. And before break, I talked about, okay, so maybe your parenting style hasn't been the most effective. You don't have that relationship with your children, which not only hurts you, hurts them too. I'm sure they would like it to be different. You used a really great analogy earlier, and you talked about sometimes you need a parent as if you're their best friend. Not
the neighbor's kid, or right.
Right. How can we shift what we've been doing to affect a better result and get better connections with our kids?
We can start today. I really want to speak to that listener that is feeling the overwhelm or the like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. This is, I'm too far along, or this isn't going to work. That's nonsense. Actually, like, any day is a fine day to shift. And I see it happen all the time in parental relationships. That's why I love working with moms. And I'm talking about moms, with kids all out of the house, because our behaviors, us over functioning or giving advice without consent or feeling, it really is the feeling state of that, like, oh my gosh, they're doing something wrong, or I need to help them in some way. That comes out no matter their age, and any day, any moment, any year is a fine time to change. And I will see relationships where the mom is, she'll come to me and say, like, he doesn't talk, he only calls me on my birthday, or he doesn't even call me on my birthday, sends a text, or she's removed her family from me, or that I have seen with just some specific, changes, those relationships now flourishing, where they'll go away on a trip together, or they'll have, so it is that, that connection, because the kid wants connection too. And I think that's important. So, one of the things, it's the old saying of, like, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. That goes here. So if you're thinking it's too late, it's too late. So just notice that thought in your head. That's not a fact. So that's where I would start, and to just be like, oh, I notice I'm thinking it's too late. Okay, well, how is that affecting my behavior? Well, maybe, what if I just stopped thinking that thought? How would I be acting if I didn't have that thought? Well, maybe I'd be using some of these tools that Dominique and Susie are talking about. And let me just get started now. And so where we really want to start is, if we do still have connection with these kids, is to really pay attention to how we're connecting with them and the words that we're saying. Are we doing a lot of that fixing? Are we doing, and some of the words there would be, like, are you sure? And don't forget. And maybe you should do this. Or like, here's a podcast episode on how to raise your kids or how to have your, cause we can get hyper parenting with our grandkids too. I have 4 grandkids, and it's this popcorn parenting really comes into play where it's like, everyone's going to do things differently, and we're going to move through things differently. And how would I act if this was my neighbor's kid and she was telling me that, her kids are really hyper, and I'm watching them and all they're doing is watching TV and eating red food dye, It's like, would I say something, or would I just be like, oh, that's too, what are you going to do about it? And these types of things can change all the time. So one thing I just want to back out is that when we're parenting in the way that has been modeled for us, everyone. So it's normal to sort of take a breath here in the podcast and be like, oh my gosh, I've been doing that. You've been doing that because that's what everyone else has been telling you to do too. To just like, oh my gosh, if your kid is not in the, the expert violinist, it's your fault. And if they aren't on the travel soccer, it's, what do you do? So we've been parented in that fear place of parenting. And so now taking this breath and being like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. Like, this isn't working. And what happens is we either have, it tends to go 2 ways. We either have a loss of connection, the kid starts to pull away because they're just like, I don't want that advice. Like, like, come on, mom, like, why do you think I can't handle my own bank account? Or just back out. Like, they are just craving that independence. Or we get an over dependence on mom where they are relying on mom and dad, but mom's brain. And they're thinking they can't do it on their own. They have learned, because of us giving advice and us thinking our way is the right way, they now believe that too, that our way is the right way. And so that increases anxiety. So we often really what we're seeing, if we're looking like factually, is we're seeing a failure to launch because they're just like, oh, mom will do it. Okay. And extra anxiety of like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Like everything's out of, because they're not learning to use their own brain. So that is where, that would be the motivation to move forward into this promised land that actually exists where you have, you have a connected relationship with your kids. I always say my job is to love and support. I have all sons. So my job is to love and support my son. And I come back to that over and over again. And so I will say, what would feel supportive and loving to them in this moment? Okay. That can help me like just sort of pull my head in and not give over advice. And another thing that can help sort of an in-between stage when parents, because it is a nervous system response. Like we literally feel like we're going to die. Like it feels very uncomfortable in our chest when our kids are nervous. So something else we can do instead of just doing it in our head, like this isn't my job. It's okay. Everything's going to work out for them. If that feels too far out of reach for you, mama, you can actually open your mouth and say, I hear you're having this experience. Do you want me to hear, help, or handle this? Like just slow it down a little. Okay. So it's like, do you want me to hear? Do you want me to help, or do you want me to handle this? Your daughter comes in, she's like, oh, my car has a flat tire and I need to get to work. And then you ask. It's a way of asking for consent. Again, you're like, and she's like, I want you to handle it. And maybe you do that in this time because you're like, she has a lot on her plate. Okay. Or she's like, no, you know what? I just want you to hear me. I'm just totally stressed out. I know what to do. Like I can change a flight, like watch me, but that sort of stopping, pausing, and asking instead of just going into the reactive problem solving can be really helpful. It's also, what I love about it is it's teaching our kids, daughters especially, listeners, to know and to pause and to think, what do I want? What do I need? Because that is something that I see happen a lot in midlife is that we get to midlife and we've spent, our whole life taking care of everyone else, paying attention to everyone else's needs. Like I knew what my kids like to eat for dinner, what clothing felt good on my son, all that. But then when I got to midlife, it's like, what do I like? I'm like, I have no idea. Yeah. And that caused a lot of drama in my adult relationships because then I'm like looking to them to meet my needs where no, hold on. Like I'm an adult here. Where can I say, oh, actually I need this or I like this. And so if we start asking our kids, no matter their age, do you want me to hear, help, or handle that? And they're like, let me see. And say they say handle and you go in and you start to do that. And then they start to object. You're like, well, wait, I thought you wanted me to handle that. And they're like, oh, Yeah, that doesn't feel so, okay, maybe I just wanted you to hear me. Like it's a learning curve. It's all fluid. It's all still very manageable or malleable.
Right. And it's clear just from listening to you speak, we have so overserved others and underserved ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, as I'm listening to you too, you clearly believe we need to release ourselves of a managerial type of a role
Yes.
and become more mentors of the people in our lives that we are trying to support, encourage, grow so that they can be independent. And I have to share with you a story recently that's so applicable to all of this. My son is 20 and he just moved into his own apartment and he had bedroom furniture, but that was it. I mean, nothing else. So these days, the beauty is you can furnish a place on the cheap, whether it's Amazon, Walmart, Target, Home Goods, you name it. You can make a place look really cute, but you're going to have to build it. And I will tell you, I made him with every little Allen wrench and every screw. The two of us were in there reading the crazy directions that are diagram only, trying to figure out what goes where, exhausted, hands throbbing. But do you know what that did, Susie?
Yeah.
He created such a sense of pride and bonding with all of this work and everything that he did, that now suddenly he's like, well, I don't want my friends to have any dark sodas on this table. And he's now effective. He now has a sense of ownership over something because why? He puts sweat equity into it as opposed to it just showing up in the house because mom or dad provided.
Well, he also feels pride.
Yes.
So that's a lot of what we're stealing from our kids when we're rushing in and fixing. And I love that you brought that up because this is sort of my overview on our model of parenting. And it is using the medical model in that when our kids are 8 and under, it is us. Like we are the boss. We are the manager. It is our brain is making pretty much 100% of the decisions. It doesn't matter if our kid doesn't want to hold our hand or not. When they're crossing the street, we're holding hands and we're using our brain, not their brain to do that. When they are, 20 and above and launched, what do we want? We want their brain to be running the show. We don't want them to be like, Mom, should I cross when when the lady's like, no, let's please. Right, exactly. We want their brain to do. And then in the interim, like between 8 and 25, that's when we're in this consultant role, but we're doing a bit of brain share. So maybe when they're 10, it's still 90% our brain, 10% their brain, and 15, it's 50, and so what you and your son did there, it's like, really, when they're 5, we put together their coffee table for them, or like we put together their changing table for them. Exactly. When they're 20, we're like, we're going to do it together. Let's go. We see how we order it. We see how it comes. We do the pickup. We're doing it together. And then what a fun experience. We're bonding. And then when they're 25, he's going to do it on his own. It's all this. It's actually, I had a very similar experience that my youngest son, who just turned 21, spring break, he just texted me and was like, do you know that I'm going to Europe for spring break? He goes to school in California. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, tell me more, like whatever. And he's telling me about the trip. And I said, I'm still like, where are we falling in this medical model? I said, do you need any help with like visas or that sort of stuff? And he's like, no, I got it all covered. And there was a part of me that I'm like, no, are you sure? But that's because we have done, like, I raised them in Virginia. I now live in Australia. They've traveled internationally alone. He travels to his school in California from Virginia or Australia. And so there is that, I've done it with them. I remember as a parent, saying to all my sons at different times, like, okay, pretend that I'm not here. Here's your boarding pass. What do we do? That sort of. And so we're really, as a parent, that's what we're trying to do. And I just want to speak to the part there that parenting is one of the most wonderful jobs on the earth. And it's one of the worst because if we do our job well, our kids have launched and don't need us anymore.
Right.
And there's something about that, like feeling of being needed, that can feel like, oh my gosh, he didn't need me to do the visas. And that is like, oh, right. He's not, 15, like, yay, he's doing the thing, but he doesn't need me anymore. And that's back to, I think it's a really good place to center on where like our most important skill as a parent is to self-regulate, because I could feel that feeling and then say something to him like, well, I wish you had, or wow, son, I think that if you had asked me, I'd feel left out of your plans, or I could have been like more, ugh. And what does that do for our relationship? If we're looking at those two ways of going, it makes him pull away. Okay, right. Next time I'm not going to tell mom about Europe. I won't even tell her I went. And so it is normal. I like defining mental health as having a reasonable feeling for the circumstance we're going through. It is not always about feeling happy. So raising a kid and having them launch and becoming these, kids who can make decisions on their own and use their brains can feel like a bit of, bittersweet is the emotion that I sort of label it as.
Yeah. And Susie, maybe we're not needed in the traditional ways that we were needed, but now maybe because there is trust in the relationship, we're actually wanted for different reasons, because now we're a confidant. Now we're safe. Now maybe we're the first call when something happens in a relationship with them, because they know they've got a sounding board, and there's such sweetness in that, that he felt comfortable to share that with me. Where he didn't have that trust, that wouldn't have happened.
And that's what I love. And that's where asking, do you want me to hear, help, or handle this? Or that's where really practicing the skills of just letting them have their emotion, that builds the safety in the relationship. So they feel safe to come to us and say, hey, can you help me put together my table? And he feels safe because you're not going to be like, well, why'd you get this cheap table? Why didn't you, no, it's like, okay, mom's on the job. I got it. Or they feel safe to come to us and tell us about their trip to Europe. And it is in these everyday actions that we build that safety. And that's why I really like to have the mantra in my own head that my job is to love and support them. I get together with my kids all the time. I feel deeply connected to them, but they don't need me. I don't feel the responsibility or the burden that if they're going through something, it's somehow mine to solve or mine to fix. I will feel empathy if they're going through it because they're my favorite humans in the world. Yet, do I feel like, am I up at night at 3 a.m. thinking like, what should Tyler do about his job? Or what should Ryan, no, because I'm practicing that popcorn parenting and regulating myself. I can't tell you how many times I tap right here. If they're watching a video, I tap my sternum and I'm just like, it makes sense. You're stressed when your kid is stressed. I'm just trying to bring my nervous system back to, homeostasis. And I'm like, you're safe. It's all right. This is part of their life. Just doing that inner talk to myself to bring my emotional state back down into sort of what I call the green zone, so that I can then show up and love and support the people in my life the way that I want to.
I love that. We've been talking a lot about parenting children, and, you and I have adult children, and most of the audience, I would say, does as well. I also want to talk about, before we wrap up today, because this conversation is so joyful and fascinating for me. I want to talk about being a child of a parent who's still living, and that dynamic. My mom passed a couple of years ago, and my audience knew her very, very well. And I had many people who would always comment, I wish I had the relationship you and your mother had. I'm estranged with my mom, or we're just not that close. And, I really struggle in that area. And, I can't say my relationship with my mom was perfect through all the seasons. We certainly had our challenges. We had our quiet kind of chill moments where, we weren't firing on all cylinders. And I will say this, the power of 2 words, I'm sorry, can really, really help bridge gaps and mend fences. And I don't know why those words can be so difficult for people to admit, but I feel like time is running short in that area. And somebody needs to give, somebody needs to offer forgiveness or maybe an apology or something, because why let that relationship go and then deal with lingering resentment and bitterness, heartache, right? So what's your encouragement in that area?
Well, I think this could and probably should be another whole podcast episode. My background is I had a lot of betrayal with my biological family, in that in my divorce, my parents supported my ex with their money and made it so that and so I went through a period of estrangement with my family. Okay. And now I'm moving back into a different place, but I speak expertly on this. in terms of how to accept the parents that we have. You know, one of the thoughts that I think is I have the exact parents I needed to have to become the woman I'm becoming today. And also it needs a deeper conversation than I have the time for right now, because I'm sorry for sure. Like in the ideal world, if we're all given Disney mom and Disney dad, them saying, like, I say to my kids all the time, I was like, of course I messed up. I messed up all that. Like, tell me, let me repair. I'll go to any therapy session. You can lay it on me. Like, that's my job. And I have a very, different model of parenting in terms of it being top. Like, I am responsible. They're not responsible to me to do things to make me feel better. I'm the mom. I brought them into this world. I have that responsibility. And then from a daughter whose parents, act or don't act in certain ways, or I have certain relationships with them, I love my parents. I deeply love them. And I do not talk to my father. I do not have him in my life. And I wish him well every day of it. And that has taken me a long time to get there. But I really would love to help listeners with that, with the forgiveness and how to get to that place when the other human in your life is not opening their mouth to say, I'm sorry, because that often is not the case. It takes a very emotionally mature person to say, like, bring it. I know. I've been a mess up.
Right. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And to your point, you oftentimes don't get it. And every situation is unique. Every level of, as you say, betrayal, pain, hurt, unique. So there is no, one size fits all. I mean, I never got the I'm sorry from my dad, but it was enough for me to be able to overlook and to be able to forgive, so that I was able to move through my life in that way. But I mean, your situation is a whole other level. And you know what? And I would love to talk with you at length about that, about older parent, mature woman.
Forgiveness. Yes.
Forgiveness, all of it, because sometimes you can't pick your parents, right? You can't. And you just sometimes get stuck in these situations where
you will get stuck unless you do cognitive work. And I have to say that it actually doesn't matter if your parent is still alive or not, that there are people, I'm sure, out there listening whose parent has passed and they are still feeling resentful or irritated or angry. And who is that hurting? It's hurting us. So I would love to help people with that.
Yeah. And what do you recommend? I mean, what kind of work and therapy and what do you do? I'm assuming you do one-on-one counseling as well, right?
I do one-on-one coaching. And I take it from, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapy. So CBT. Yes. But also, like, what I love about coaching, which is different than therapy, is I can pull from a whole bag of tricks. And so I do CBT for sure with clients, DBT also, but in this certain specific, when parental relationships are coming up, I use a lot of somatic healing, mindfulness work, a lot of, so we're working on the thoughts and the thinking, but we're also working on the felt sense in our body, because there's a lot of stuff we're holding on to there and how it will show up for us. So that is impactful.
Very impactful. And just kind of buttoning it up today, since we've been focusing on being parents and being the best parents, we said you can't pick your parents. And so that's a whole other situation, but you can certainly pick how you're going to parent and the legacy that you're going to leave in that respect. So what's kind of like your parting shot on all of that? And just, first of all, being a parent is such a gift. It's such a gift, an opportunity. So maybe we need to start seeing it as that. And then how can we kind of reframe what it is that we're doing in this role?
Yeah, I guess with the generational thing that we're talking about, I like to say, and my son actually bought me a sign that he found in like Marshall somewhere that says the dysfunction stops here. So that can really empower people to be like, okay, we have the situation with the older generation that we have, and we do our work on that. But starting right here, right now, we can do things differently, and getting into that empowered place and excitement for doing it. I also want to talk to the listener, and I want you to hear me, that you're doing better than you think you are. Like when we're thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much I need to do. That's not true. Like you're listening. If they're listening to this show now to this, like there is love, there is dedication, there is commitment there. And that goes a long way. And so just taking some of these little steps to change would be great. Listening to my show, the Love Your Life Show podcast is great. I have a roadmap for some of the foundational exercises to really episodes, at smbwell.com/roadmap that I can share that with you. That's really a nice place. I also have I can share it with your listeners in a different link on, just parenting specific ones or codependent ones. I have over 300 episodes. So there are lots of, I really, because of what I went through with my divorce and I was broke on the floor and bankrupt, I got a lot of my learning from podcasts. And so I'm really committed to putting a lot of free research out there. You are going to make fast movement in your life if you get a coach. I think everyone should have a coach. So if there's room on my schedule, I'd love to help people with that. I run a Love Your Life school, which is a group membership also. So I threw a lot out there, but I want people to leave this conversation feeling empowered and hopeful and knowing the truth as I see it is there is always something you can do. I don't care how old your kids are. I don't care if your parents are still alive or not. Like you right here, you're on this earth breathing. There's a lot in your control with what you can do to feel better in your life. And that ripples out in magical ways with that. Like I have full body goosebumps, Dominique, because it is just so cool when I see parents making these little shifts and them coming back in no joke, like a month and being like, they're talking to me or they're like, it is just like, it just, yes. Like, arrows coming out of my head. I know.
No, it is. It's it's empowering. And there's no time like the present. We cannot change the past. We cannot predict the future. But what we can do is focus on the here and now. And I love that you are enabling women. You are getting them to kind of think and get excited and also just accept, hey, you're doing okay. It's not as bad as you think it is.
You really are.
Because we tend to beat ourselves up. It's like, oh my gosh, we're not anywhere near where we should be.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, maybe you have goals and that's all good and fine.
Yeah.
But just give yourself some grace in the moment.
You're listening to podcasts like this. Like, come on. That makes you, I call my listeners warriors because I'm like, do you know how many people are doing this? Not the majority. So you are extraordinary. So yay you. So just a little bit of that. Yeah.
Yay,
listener.
You. And preach, Susie, preach. So I'm going to have you back. We're going to dive into, I'm serious. We're going to dive into the adult parent relationship as well. There is so much to unpack there, but my goodness, thank you for your time today.
Fun.
We'll link all of those places, your podcast, your website, everything that you just mentioned will be linked in the description so people can find you. But so glad to know you. And
so fun.
I know. And looking forward to further conversations with you.
All right, great. Thank you. So fun.
Thank you, Susie. What fun. My goodness. Like I said, we could have talked for hours and we will have her back. If you enjoyed this conversation and you are watching on YouTube, for instance, leave a comment in the comment section below. If you have any questions for Susie, anything you would like for either she or I to take a look at, that would be wonderful. If you are listening, wherever you listen to a podcast, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share Over 50 and Flourishing with those that are connected to you, your fellow sister, your daughter, your friend. There are so many women who could benefit from content like Susie's and the experts that we bring onto this show. So looking forward to looping you in, having you a part of this community, and I thank you in advance for doing so. Have a blessed week. We'll see you next time. I just love hearing Tamara Levitt say, "Welcome to the Daily Calm." I'll tell you what, I hear those words and I'm already feeling more relaxed and at peace. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, and it gives you the power to calm your mind and literally change your life. Calm has an exclusive offer just for listeners of our show. Get 40% off a Calm Premium subscription at calm.com/over50. This is an amazing value. Go to calm.com/over50 for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. Calm.com/over50 and tell Calm you heard about them from me.